Hey guys, I am here today with this. This is the 2026 Aston Martin Vantage Roadster. Let's get into it. So the Vantage Roadster is new for this year. I drove the last gen a few years ago. You can see that content here, both the coupe and the Roadster, and that was a fantastic drive. But this is a little different. First of all, as you can see from some of these design cues, this presents itself as a more aggressive vehicle than the last generation, and it does deliver on that promise. Let me tell you more. So under the hood, we've got a twin turbo powered 4-cylinder V8 from AMG. So the numbers on that are a whopping 656 horsepower and 590 foot-pound of torque. It also gets from 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds. So speaking of aggression, let's look at this delicious quad exhaust. It's also, please don't miss the one thing that really matters, you guys, rubber on the road. So these are the same Michelin tires that I drove in the DB12. That was just sticky and delicious. You'll notice also a lot of design details here between the carbon elements that give us a bit of that airflow. It also becomes really interesting in the convertible versus the coupe. They were talking about the airflow off this little wing and how that's given us a little bit of downforce, everybody's favorite D word, but also how the design with the glass makes it so that you can have a cabin where you can actually have a conversation. Really nice. Let's do it. Hi guys, here I am in my Aston Martin Vantage Roadster. Don't hate me because I'm beautiful. The interior in this car is very, very red, which is normally something I would not recommend because reflections annoy me as a driver. However, in this vehicle, it's not really a problem. I'm not getting a lot of reflection on the windshield. It's not reflecting back in my face. Everything is really beautifully executed from a driver's standpoint. And when form meets function like that, I am a happy girl. Now I'm even happier when I can do this. Whee! I'm sorry, did you enjoy that as much as I did? I don't think you possibly could. That was fantastic. I'm in Sport Plus mode. Again, you can adjust those modes here. Go down to Sport. You see, everything changes a little bit, which is nice. Also, I've got my shifters here, my paddle shifters. This cockpit is so delightful. I really, really like this design. I love the balance of there's a touchscreen here, obviously, and it's Aston's own interface, but it's good, right? And I've got Apple CarPlay. It doesn't have Android Auto, but who cares? Well, I guess Android people care, but whatever. We've got these knobs here that are really easy to use. This is my shifter. One little thing that bugs me is it's a little too subtle for my taste, and sometimes because of the steering wheel position, it's hard to see what gear you're in, but who cares? We've got, this button here is going to change the exhaust note, which I like a lot. You can also do things like turn off the automatic start and stop like everything else, right? You've got your seat coolers, seat warmers. The seat coolers, I'm not feeling them a lot, guys. I noticed that in English cars, they're just not necessarily as aggressive in the heating and cooling as American cars are, or even as Korean and Japanese cars are. That's okay. That's all right, Aston. We'll let that one slide. You guys might notice I'm not getting, it's sunny out. Well, it's about to be sunny out. No, okay, here we are in the sun. I'm not getting a lot of reflection on this screen or on this screen, which is honestly a rarity in the world of multiple screens. There's always one that you can't see at all. Also in this vehicle is a 12-speaker Bowers & Wilkins sound system. Bowers & Wilkins is a company that Aston's been working with for a while. I love the sound system in the DB12. It was extraordinary. This one's good too. Is it as good? Nah, not sure. Not exactly sold on that, but that's all right. No, I'm not going to race the guy in the Corvette. Not interested. This is a good time for me to take you through the drive modes. We have Sport. Do you hear that? Sounds so good. Then we can put it into Sport Plus. And you can immediately feel things stiffen up, right? Gets a little different. The road feels a little different. Woo! And then it sounds so good. I have a straightaway right now, so I'm not feeling like I want to get a ticket today, but you can imagine the damage that's been done. Anyway, like I said, we have Sport, we have Sport Plus, we have Track Mode, we have Individual, and we have Wet Mode. I don't think it's going to rain today, so we won't need the wet mode, but these drive modes are fantastic. I've said it once, I'll say it again. Use your drive modes, people, for the love of God, particularly if you're going to be smart enough to purchase a beautiful vehicle like this. Use your drive modes. It makes all the difference. All right, let's talk a little bit about this drive. Okay, so we talked about the AMG engine that they have here with Aston, and that the Aston engineers have tinkered with this a little bit and made it their own. I'm going to actually meet with one of their performance guys and show you that interview in a minute. We'll dig deeper into that. In terms of the steering, I noticed this in the DB12, that it's really precise and really allows me to do what I want to do, right? If there's something I want to accomplish, like back there, I wanted to do a U-turn in a really tight spot, it's got me. Aston's got me, no problem. If I can imagine it, it can accomplish it, which is really nice. Dampers by Bilstein, tuned for Aston, feel fantastic. The amount of road feel that I'm feeling, as well as the fact that I'm comfortable but not complacent, is perfect for a sports car. And it's really keeping me engaged in this drive. But the other thing that's interesting about this car that for me makes a really great sports car is it's just as enjoyable in low speeds as it is going fast. Of course I want to go fast, you guys. Of course I want to melt my face off every moment of every day, but that's not how life goes. Sometimes you gotta park it. Sometimes you gotta go to the grocery store. And this is just as enjoyable because as elegant as it looks on the outside, the drive is that elegant, even at lower speeds. Just lovely. Also, let's talk about the acceleration. We've got a 0 to 60 time of 3.5 seconds. Hurrah, hurrah! P.S. That's with no electrification, guys. Sure, there are all kinds of crappy little cars that will go from 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds. But will they do it like this? No, they won't, because they're not an Aston Martin. Also, I really need to talk about these brakes. There are two brake options for the Vantage Roadster and the Vantage Coupe. There's a ceramic disc brake option as well as steel brakes. I am very much enjoying these brakes. They're not touchy, they're not too sensitive. They're really, really nice combination of responsive and, you know, well-behaved. There's also an 8-speed automatic transmission that is smooth, you guys. It's just so smooth, you barely feel it. You don't feel it where you don't want to feel it, but where you want to feel it, like in the downshift, that's right. You feel it in the best possible way. They've really, really taken the time to tune that in a way that is really satisfying, even if you're a manual driver that isn't sure that she wants to be behind the wheel of an automatic transmission vehicle. Still a little bit satisfying. Of course, I've got my paddle shifters. I can put it in manual mode, but I'm still feeling like the itch is scratched with the transmission feel because the noises are changing, the way the vehicle's responding is changing, and I'm getting the visceral reaction I want from this vehicle. Hooray. I guess I'll leave it on for a minute. I mean, I didn't have to move it. I didn't have to move it. It just locked in and went like it was driving itself. The thing, I've said this before and I'm going to say it again, the best cars to me make you a better driver. And this car just did that back then, where I was going around a curve and I thought I had it locked in. I wasn't quite sure, but Aston took care of me and it made me a better driver. It's hard to articulate that if you never experienced that, but this vehicle is so easy to use and so responsive that it elevates your driving performance. Which is kind of nice. Without a whole lot of thought, research, and you don't have to go to school to figure it out. Whee! All right, guys, so this convertible top can go up. It takes 6.9 seconds, and you can start it. As long as you're moving under 30 miles per hour, you can do like that. So I don't know if you guys noticed the noise difference once the top went up, but obviously it's a little different and a little quieter in here. The design of the top is special because it has 8 layers of special material that's keeping it incredibly well insulated. And I will say, I do notice a bit cozier of a vibe here now that the top is up. But who are we kidding? I'm in a convertible. Let's put the top down. My co-driver pressed the button. It's not a hands-free situation. All right, guys, there is a lot happening in the engineering of this vehicle, so I brought in a professional. So I've got Simon Newton here with me. He's the director of vehicle performance for Aston, or for just this vehicle?
For Aston Martin as a brand.
Dream job, am I right? I'm feeling it. So Simon, we were talking last night about the performance of this vehicle and how special it is. And I just have 3 million questions, but I'm only going to ask you a few because some of it would be best explained by a professional.
Okay.
So talk me through, first of all, this magnificent engine, which I guess you guys are getting from AMG?
Yep, that's correct. So the power plant is from our technology partners, AMG, as you say, but it's very much optimized for our specification. So we're very lucky with our relationship. We get to specify exactly what combination of hardware goes on the power unit.
Yep.
And for example, we specify what turbos we want, what inlet manifolds, what camshafts, etc.
Yep.
So that we can balance all that just to perfectly suit this size of car. We want it suitably responsive and powerful, but has to be balanced for the Vantage context.
Got it. So if you guys don't get that they're getting, so Mercedes is their partner and AMG is the performance end of Mercedes. So that's who's making this engine. And so you make all those specifications and that is how it's delivered to you. And then you guys make additional adjustments once it lands in Aston land?
Yeah, it starts even before that. That's the combination of the hardware that goes together that gets delivered to us. But very importantly, we have complete control over how we calibrate, basically how we tune the engine and the gearbox to give it, again, its own character.
Great. And so there, I drove the last generation of this vehicle and I was really interested in driving this because it looks so different, right? And then, but you don't know until you get behind the wheel if is the proof in the pudding? Is it going to drive as, it looks a lot more aggressive, it looks a lot more beefy, and it looks more like a sports car, more impressive and almost intimidating, which isn't something that Aston has always been good at or has always embraced. So when I drove it, I did find that it was a lot more aggressive, and the torque and horsepower numbers reflect that, right? And we're dealing with, can you talk me through the addition of horsepower and torque? Are we at 150 additional horsepower from the last gen?
Yeah, so we're up 30% in terms of extra power.
Got it.
So that's up to 665 PS.
Yep. And
we're up 15% in torque, so up to 800 Newton meters. So significant. We're now class leading in terms of power to weight.
Great. And we've got a 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds, right? Yeah. The other way I could feel it was just in the road feel itself. There was this really interesting balance between agility, road feel, and comfort. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's something that is very specific to Aston because it is this elegant brand and it is a sports car, but it isn't the world's most, you're not necessarily supposed to be the D-bag that passes everybody in the Aston Martin. You're still kind of supposed to be a gentleman or a gentlewoman in my case. So I'm sure those aren't the terms you're throwing around there at HQ, but can you talk to me a little bit about that balance between comfort and aggression?
Yeah, certainly. So when we developed this new generation of sports cars, as we refer it to, they had to be very true to the Aston character. So the Aston is essentially a refined sports car. So a car that breathes with the road, is easy to place on the road for precision, etc. But in line with the new expectation for Aston Martin, very much a performance luxury brand, we needed to amplify all those characteristics. And that's where we put the time, energy and resources, overlaying technologies and carefully tuning them so that we can get that essential Aston characteristic but taken to the next level. Yeah,
I mean, that is definitely something that I felt, and I also felt that it wasn't an intimidating drive. Sometimes when you get in a Lambo or a Ferrari, there's so many buttons that it all feels so intimidating, where this is a very welcoming, and the ease of use in this car is really fantastic, and very well executed between the layout of the cockpit and the buttons and all of that. It wasn't intimidating, which was nice.
Yeah, good, thank you. Yeah, it needed to be easy to drive, fast, and not at all intimidating, as you say. Needed to be very much confidence inspiring.
That's right. And I was saying that in my drive. There was one point where I went around a corner and I just locked it in and went around this really sharp corner, and my drive partner turned to me and she went, "Woo!" And I was like, yeah, it just did that. I mean, that to me is the mark of a great sports car, is when you're, any car, honestly, that makes you a better driver. And when a sports car makes you feel like you're the king of the road, that's a phenomenal feeling. And I did have that motor today, and it was quite lovely, I'm not gonna lie.
Good, glad you enjoyed it.
So my final question to you is, let's talk a little bit about these delicious exhaust noise. If I could have a new ringtone, if you guys could set that up for me, I'd really appreciate that. But so I was told that there's a rumor that there are two guys working at Aston that all their job is to tune the exhaust sound. Is that a real thing?
It is, yeah. We have specialists dedicated to sound quality, as we call it.
They're sound quality engineers?
Yeah, it's part of what we call as a wider attribute performance field.
Yeah.
Your overall impression of how fast the car feels, which is separate to how fast it actually
sounds.
Is. So it's all to do with the emotional element of performance. And they're key team members, and they are expert in bringing out the best from the engine and bringing that sound all the way back to the driver's ear.
Yeah, and so it's difficult in the convertible. None of it is pumped. I mean, obviously none of it is artificial, but is any of it put through the cockpit so that the driver can hear it?
To be perfectly honest, there are certain frequencies which emissions require us to almost delete by default. So as we put in the particulate filters, etc., we sometimes lose small elements of the organic sound. And so we use the source from the engine, so it is genuinely timed perfectly to the combustion process.
Wow.
We just kind of fill those back in just lightly to make sure it is the full sound that the engine is really producing.
That's fascinating. That's absolutely fascinating. Well, it sounds delicious and delightful, and I had a really great time in this vehicle. Thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it. Okay, convertible trunks are notoriously awful. Let's take a look at this Vantage. They like to remind us it's got a Z fold, which is American for a Z fold. So it folds up there, gives you a little bit of room. Let me show you what I got. So you could easily put golf clubs if that's your jam. In my world, that's a target run. You're fine. If you couldn't tell by the sweat on my forehead, I spent a lot of time in this car today as a passenger, and I think it's important to talk about what it feels like as a passenger. First of all, it's comfy, right? It's just like, duh, you're sitting in an Aston Martin. If you're miserable, you have a problem. But also it just doesn't feel like that person's driving very fast. You feel safe and comfortable. And because this is very easy to reach, you feel like you're kind of in control of the audio system as well. Very, very nice. We were able to have a conversation, which is always the thing in a convertible that everybody is wondering, right? Do we have to scream? I will say we were screaming a little bit on the freeway, but other than that, it was perfect. So there you have it, 2026 Aston Martin Vantage Roadster. Isn't she lovely? Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm Motorhead Mama. See you next time.